Hello, this is Vulturefire, and this is part one of my field guide to the Vortex. So this first video is going to be a rough overview of how Area 4 works, but I will not be getting into much in the way of details. However, I do plan to release, very shortly after this video, a video for each of the enemies in the Vortex, going into exactly what they can do and some tips for defeating them. And I figured that given my generally long-winded method of explaining things, it would be beneficial to break it into multiple parts instead of having a single video that is over an hour long, both for my benefit and for yours. There will be a playlist in the description of this video with links to the other videos in the guide. So look for that. All right. First thing to talk about, how the Vortex works. So in order to get to the Vortex, you have to be playing on depth 4. I didn't write that here, but it's the 4th area, so depth 4. You'll see it on the map screen when you go to depth 4. It'll be the red circle at the top. And you will go there after you defeat the Area 3 boss. So you'll beat Hollow Maw or Baelator or White Flame Guardian. And then after that fight, you will, as usual for an end boss, you will take the cards, you will take the upgrade, you'll take the removal, and you will enter the Vortex. Inside the Vortex, things will look a little different than you're used to. There are only 3 fights in the Vortex, and they are all boss fights. The first 2 are aspect fights. So these are sort of mid-bosses. They are counted, though, as full bosses for the purposes of how many idols they will get. So similar to an end boss in an area, if you have 3 idols active, then the aspect fights will have 2 idols augmenting them. And all active idols can show up in the Vortex. So normally if you invoke, say, 3 idols, there will be 2 active in any one area, and the third one will just not be augmenting any fights. In the Vortex, all 3 idols will be able to show up, although it's possible for the same 2 idols to augment all 3 fights. Most likely you'll get, like, for example, let's say you have White Flame and Endurance and Hunger. The first fight might be White Flame and Endurance, and the second fight might be Endurance and Hunger, and the third fight might be again White Flame and Endurance again. So there is no guarantee that you'll see all 3 possible pairings, but you will likely see all 3 idols at least once, which is something to be aware of. Another thing, the Manic Presence Weather is active for all fights in the Vortex. The Manic Presence Weather doesn't have a passive effect that directly causes anything to happen. It doesn't, eat your first card you play every turn like Scorching Winds does. It doesn't heal things when you draw like Soothing Skies does. It is just a warning that things are going to happen at the end of turn. Manic Presence Weather has a lot more cards than any other weather, and I will be getting into that in my next video tomorrow. Or if you are not watching this video the day it came out, you can, of course, go to the description, find the playlist, and jump straight to the second video. So let's talk about, real quick, the different kinds of fights. So I mentioned the aspects. There are 5 of them: Avarice, Conquest, Destruction, Dread, and Tenacity. You can see which aspects you will be fighting on the map before the run starts. So when you're choosing your depth, you can click on the area to see which bosses are going to be active. If you click on the top area when depth 4 is selected, it will tell you which 2 aspects you will need to fight. This can be very useful to know since different aspects can require different strategies to approach. For example, the Conquest doggos, there are 4 of them, and being able to take out the back ones first can be very helpful. Whereas Destruction has a tendency to do a lot of big multi-hits, so if you're trying to rely on only a handful of evasion per turn, you are not going to do so well. So those are things to keep in mind. The aspects do give normal boss rewards. However, in quick play, you don't get the extra upgrade or reroll. So you'll just get 1 upgrade and 1 removal in quick play instead of the 2 upgrades, 1 removal, 1 reroll that you would get for the other fights. The aspect fights, though, are generally, the aspect card rewards are generally very good because it is Area 4 bosses and monster cards get stronger with each area. So a lot of times from these fights, what you're looking for is the aspect cards to give you a little extra boost of power going into the Mudreira fight. So as I said, in your run, if you have 3 idols invoked, each aspect fight will be augmented by 2 idols. So that's something to be aware of. And then the final fight is, of course, Mudreira. There are 3 forms that you need to be keeping in mind in order of difficulty. They're called Mudreira, Primal Mudreira, and Formless drayra. Unlike other bosses, normally bosses, which one you fight is just random each run, but with Mudreira, it depends on your previous runs. If you win a depth 4 run, you'll fight a harder version next time. So if you fought the normal Mudreira and you win, next run, Primal Mudreira will be your next boss. If you beat Primal, you'll have to fight Formless next time. You beat Formless, you'll have to fight Formless next time. Formless is the highest version, so you will just fight it again next time. If you lose a depth 4 run, you fight an easier version next time. Doesn't matter whether you or not you make it to the Mudreira fight. It is worth noting, I have several videos recorded on betas before this was true. Originally, you did have to make it to Area 4 in order to downgrade the Mudreira you were fighting. But now, losing a run is going to drop you down, and abandoning the run still counts as losing. You can't go lower than the first form, though, so you've got that. So if Formless is your current boss and you lose the run, regardless of where that is, even if it's, you're doing a draft, you get out of the draft, you're like, oh, these cards are trash, and you just abandon before you even start the first fight, you've lost the run, and you will go down to Primal for your next depth 4 run. If you lose against Primal, regular Mudreira, but regular Mudreira is the lowest form, so you can't go lower than that. So, one exception to this, the final confrontation quest will lock Mudreira's form, preventing it from downgrading. So, you don't have to worry about needing to get 3 wins in a row while doing final confrontation in order to beat the quest. You just have to beat them, beat it once, go to the next quest step, and so on. Which means that if you really, really want to fight the final form of Mudreira, the easiest way to do it might be, if you're not confident you can win multiple runs in a row, the best way to do it would be to go and do the quest again. The final confrontation quest is actually easier than a normal depth 4 run because you get the incredibly powerful Vanizgal trinket, which is intended to help players get through their first depth 4 runs. So, that's all 3 forms of Mudreira. But remember to speak of another form. A final challenge that mere mortals cannot hope to defeat said that there is indeed a final form of Mudreira that can only be found by the worthy. This is called Eternal Drayra. To fight Eternal Drayra, you must first defeat Formless Drayra with at least 3 idols invoked. Regular and Primal MD can be fought without idols, and the idols selected do not matter. So you just have to get 2 Formless, and you have to beat Formless with 3 idols invoked. This is not easy. I've done it like 3 times total that I've beaten Formless with 3 idols invoked, and I have played several hundred hours on patches with depth 4. So it's not something that most players will be able to do. I mean, it is hubris for me to say that I think that I am better than the average player, but at minimum, I have played more than the average player. And I'm telling you, getting to Eternal Drayra, not easy. But if you do it, if you defeat Formless Drayra, then on the next run that you do, after you invoke 3 idols, you can then check and you will see that Eternal Drayra is your final boss. And Eternal Drayra is even harder than Formless, and Formless is already not easy. If you're curious for more information, like I said, I'm going to have more videos later, but that's it for now. I may not make a video for Eternal Drayra, because I will likely have some hints, but I don't really like really put together a guide for Eternal Drayra, because I don't know how to beat it. I've done it once, and I was basically cheating. So I may try and see if I can wrangle one of the other players on the Discord who is a stronger player than I am into making an Eternal Drayra guide. But plan is daily parts of this until I have covered all 5 aspects and at least the first 3 forms of Mudreira. Tomorrow's video will be the Manic Presence weather, and then after that I'm just going to go through the aspects in alphabetical order, starting with Avarice. So look forward to that. But for now, that's it. I will see you next time. Until then, toodles.